Hi, this is Todd Malakote, the SEO faculty for Market Motive and online marketing consultant at stuntdouble.com, and I'm here to provide the guide to Site Audits Part 3. We're going to ask some more audit questions involving sitemaps, robots.txt, and canonicalization issues. In the last sections, we looked at why site audits are important and some of the process, and we're going to continue with that process in 12 important audit areas to answer our 40 plus audit questions for our site audit document. We've covered the content and the crawl questions. We're going to do sitemap, robots, and canonicalization issues in this section. So we're going to look at our first question on sitemaps. So we'll start with, does the site have an XML sitemap? So a good result here would obviously be yes, it has a sitemap and it's valid and it's well optimized and it's been submitted to Google. So these are the first things we're going to check. Does it have an XML sitemap? Has it been submitted to Google? So we're going to use our test site here, phishingstatus.com. The easiest way to check this would be just to type /sitemap.xml. We're also going to look for a HTML sitemap. Usually that will be in the footer down here someplace. I don't see one of those. We can try the cite command for Google, so we'll do phishingstatus.com/sitemap to see if there's an XML or an HTML sitemap here available. And then, like I said, we can just type it in. So phishingstatus.com/sitemap.xml really doesn't return anything, so I'm guessing there's nothing there. We could also try a header checker, and I know several of these. There's several of these available from Internet Marketing Ninjas, from SEO Book. You can see Rex Swain's been around for quite some time, WebComps. But I just usually type in header checker, pick one. These are all free, simple tools, and we'll just see what status code that returns. So it says yes, that indeed does confirm it's a 404 not found on the sitemap. So we're going to make a recommendation that we create an XML sitemap, and we can do that a couple different ways. XML sitemaps is a nice free tool to do this. The Ninjas tool, which will find broken links and a handful of other things here. You can see there's all the header responses here, 200 codes. We got 302s here. There's probably some 404s in there someplace. We can run this and create an XML sitemap from here, or just download the results and look at those and organize those. We obviously don't want to submit this yet. We don't want to submit a XML sitemap to Google when there's still all these errors in here. So the recommendation here is going to be that we change, that we create this XML sitemap after we make the changes. And then we'll look at some issues. Your duplicate content issues will affect this, of what is put onto the sitemap and what is put onto the HTML sitemap. So you're going to want to make those decisions before you make your final recommendations. Again, here we're just doing the data collection. We're saying there is no XML sitemap, so our recommendation at the bottom would obviously be create one of these. If there were errors in the sitemap, if there was an existing sitemap and we confirmed that there was actually an XML sitemap, we would try this validator and see if there were any errors within that. That XML-sitemaps.com again has the sitemap validator to see if there's any issues there. The HTML sitemap, we checked for that with the cite command in Google. We can also go into Screaming Frog as another way that we can kind of run some crawls, run some test crawls, see what some of these status codes are here and sort by status code. If we wanted to find maybe all of our 404s, we can do that. We can sort by response codes. We can do some advanced export features here from Screaming Frog as well that will allow us to export an XML sitemap. So these are the things we're going to have to do after we make the changes, after we find all those response codes that are no good, all those extraneous pages, all that duplicate content. And again, with phishing status, you can see there's lots of errors here. There's outbound 404 errors, there's probably internal 404 errors. We need to find a way to fix these first, and we're identifying those here. And these are the links and the pages that we're going to need to change. Obviously, you can see it's a significant undertaking, but this is the way that we identify and diagnose and then ultimately fix these problems. So the next area we're going to consider is robots.txt and the existence of a robots.txt file. So we're going to go back to our website, and we're going to look for that file as well as if there's a declaration of sitemaps.xml. Sitemaps.xml is the file that we will create later after we have our errors fixed. Most of those response codes, for the most part, we want 200 OK, 301 and 404 if those pages do not exist. We also want to block as many of those 404s and other problem areas, duplicate content, etc. And we're going to do that by not including those in the sitemap and by blocking those with robots.txt. We also need to announce or declare our sitemap XML within that robots.txt. So we'll check for that. We'll also check for some canonicalization issues. And canonicalization issues are when there's essentially duplicate URLs. When you have a non-www version and a www version of your home page, you might have index.html or index.asp or default.asp or just extra dashes. These are all examples of canonicalization issues that we'll look at. So we're going to look at all of these kind of together. Is there an index.html version that is not 301 redirected? So again, we'll have to look at that URL and see if it's 301 redirected, or we can dig through our Screaming Frog reports, our Screaming Frog data, and find the answer to that question as well. Is there parameter URLs being created with duplicate content? So we're going to go through all of these and make a few recommendations based on these issues, if they exist, if there's problems, if there's issues, and then we'll make a couple recommendations on the robots.txt and canonicalization issues, as well as creating that sitemap. So let's go through our site phishing status here, and we can see that there is actually a robots.txt if we go to that URL. It doesn't have that declaration of the sitemap, so I would make the recommendation that we want to declare that sitemap, and this is how we would do that. We would say our sitemap exists at this location. You can see we already have user agent and disallow. You can see that in the robots.txt here is disallowing desktop modules, but hasn't declared that sitemap. So we would want to declare that sitemap with something to this effect, and I would pass that along within the documentation and say here's how to declare that sitemap. We can check for the existence again with that header checker. This is just a simple one-off header checker. Screaming Frog will check the headers for multiple pages all in one place. You can see I found all the 404 errors that we need to fix here. These are linking out to pages that don't exist. That's something we obviously need to fix here. But if we want to just do one off, if we want to check one thing, we would use any header checker here and we will run this report. And we can see in this case that there is robots.txt. It's 301ing it from the www, so that answers our other question about the www. It is in fact redirecting to the non-www. Now since we don't have that sitemap, we'll be creating that later with the XML sitemaps or with the Ninja tool here, and then we can submit that to Google. This is where we would submit that within Webmaster Tools. So the last issue that we needed to look at was if there was multiple versions of the home page, if there was an index.html or a default.asp. You can see if I type in index.html, that doesn't exist. I get a 404 page for that, which is the proper thing. The 404 page should have something on it like we talked about in the earlier video. But you can see again, if we run this, the www version 301 redirects to the non-www, which is proper. One way or the other, we want those to redirect and give the proper response, so there's not those canonicalization issues. The final area we're going to look at is, are there parameter URLs creating duplicate content within our URLs? Meaning, is there tracking URLs? Is there anything with a question mark after it? We're going to look for this with the site command or potentially with Screaming Frog. So you can see I did the site command here, and you can see there is in fact a parameter URL. This URL is duplicate content. It's a duplicate version of the home page with some type of tracking URL on it. And we're going to look for those throughout this. We're going to look for question marks, just URLs that look out of place, and we'll try to recreate those or see what part of the content management system is creating those. If maybe there's some tracking in place that's getting indexed that we don't want to have that be the case, we can include a rel canonical tag on those sorts of things and make sure that those don't continue to be indexed. So we would take all this and add it to our document. We would take some screenshots of that parameter URL and document that this is indeed duplicate content of the home page. You can see that we're getting the same information at different URLs. That's URL duplication, and we need to make a recommendation and fix that. We need to block that or put a rel canonical on this page and make that recommendation. the recommendations that I would make in this section, the positive outcomes here would be to fix the 404 and 302 errors that we identified with Screaming Frog. There's lots of 302 errors. They're being redirected. If they're going to be redirected, they need to be a permanent 301. And then we'll fix that. We'll identify and block potential duplicate content issues. This is kind of beyond the scope of this, but there are lots of videos available and information about duplicate content, so you can identify what's going on and what's creating those 500,000 URLs. And then once we block some of those areas with rel nofollow or consolidate those with rel canonical, you can create your HTML sitemap. You're going to create your sitemap.xml with the XML-sitemaps or Screaming Frog or Ninja Tool. You're going to prioritize those. You can set the priority in your XML sitemap for how important those are. You're going to set that priority as well. In robots.txt, you're going to declare the location of your sitemap.xml, and then finally you're going to submit that to Google. And within Google Webmaster Tools, you can find that under crawl and sitemaps, and then you would add and test a sitemap for any errors, any issues, and go through that process. So this would be the positive outcome. What you want to see is less errors within your crawl. When you run your different tools, there should be less of those errors, less 404s, less 301s, and this is where we're going to start with that site audit document and recommendations. Thank you for joining me in this section. In the next sections, we'll look at architecture and some of the other areas that impact the top 12 areas of your site audit document. Thanks.